This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. Episode 172 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. Make sure you're following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. Follow me on X at AntRivera86, and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, right here on YouTube. Let's get to 700 subscribers. We are on the march to that, so let's get there. Like this video, and like I said, subscribe to the podcast. Shout out, 68 people already up in the room, ready to start this show. Duran Rivera, Carlos Ortiz up in here. We got Brad in here. Matt A.B. Ibanez from Til Mets Do his part. I'll have the other half up in here in just a few moments as my guest. Armand in the house. G Money Stacks. Rosie K. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. We'll take your comments. We'll take your questions. Buzz Bass in here. So appreciate you all for tuning in. A lot to talk about today. We are going to talk about the Juan Soto bidding and what's true, what's not. We'll talk about the top 25 MLB Free Agents article by Mark Feinsand and what realistically the Mets could possibly be in on, who they could be in on, as well as preview the QBC with my guest right now. He is the host of the Queens Baseball Convention, the QBC, as well as the co-host of Til Mets Do Us Part. Waking him up very early this morning on the West Coast. I made sure to ask, are you sure you can do this? Going to be doing it at 10 a.m. He said yes. He's a man of his word. He is the man, John Saponaro. What's up, my friend?
What's going on, Ed? Thanks for having me. I said I was going to be here. I'm happy to be here. I am a little tired. I'm not going to lie to you. So I'm going to try to do my best. But if I, start wandering off with my thoughts, just rein me back in and be like, hey, man, get some more coffee. Because this is earlier than I prefer to be awake. Yes.
I got you. I got you. I got the chat in here. We will rein you in as much as we can. And let's start off at the top because on Thanksgiving, there was a rumor that came out that Juan Soto was close to signing with the Boston Red Sox, and everybody went nuts about it from a guy, and who knows, maybe he gets to be right, and maybe this is his calling card. But like I've said in the past, I only listen to two people when it comes to this type of stuff. One being Jeff Passan of ESPN, and two, Will Salmon when it comes to the Mets for The Athletic. Those two are probably the most legit when it comes to this information, and we haven't heard anything outside of that. So when Jeff Passan and Will Salmon tell us he's signed, that's when I'll start to believe it. Other rumors from the media, I feel like need to be vetted, and people who don't really have the credentials and are using social media to make a name for themselves instead of stating fact. I think that's something that everyone should be aware of and not lose their mind on a holiday that you should probably just be relaxing, enjoying food, watching football, if that's what you do. But crazy stuff to start off last week.
It's absolutely wild. I tweeted at the guy. I said, I hope you're, before I deactivated Twitter, by the way, which I'm no longer on, but I tweeted at the guy and I said, I hope your turkey tastes terrible for what you're doing, because it's nonsense, man. You can't buy into it. Yes, this guy has the scoop before Jeff Passan. Forget about Will Salmon, because that's just, Will's great. He's been on your show. He's been on my show. He's terrific. I have a tremendous amount of respect. I think he's the best guy on the Mets beat, but this is not just a Mets story. So Passan is the guy. And, some dude from Boston who's got 1,500 followers is not breaking the story. Now, look, in 3 weeks, if he signs with the Red Sox, I still don't think that makes this guy right. And because the timing of this was, it's done. Oh my God, the Red Sox are having an emergency meeting because of my tweet. And it's like, dude, no, they're not. They're not. Like, they would want nothing more than to announce. We've had things get announced on Thanksgiving. We've had things get announced on Christmas Eve. I know it tends to get a little quieter, but like, these guys are always working behind the scenes. So to sit there and say that this is like, it's done, and then if a month from now it winds up being that he signs with the Red Sox, unless the Red Sox come out and say, hey, this was done before Thanksgiving and the parameters of the deal were exactly what this guy said they were, then I'll give him credit. But until then, and I doubt that's going to happen, I just think it's nonsense. It's clout chasing. I have always said that it's just ridiculous because there's no penalty for being wrong. There never is. And look, I don't want to see anybody get in trouble. I don't want to see anybody, like, I don't mean, when I say penalty, I don't mean like, oh my God, let's bring him out in the streets and, publicly throw tomatoes at him or whatever. There should be some kind of penalty, because there used to be in journalism, it was be right. You have to be right. That's the number one thing. And now the number one thing is be first. And it's turned into be first with no consequences, and people don't even get embarrassed. Forget about like consequences with their job or whatever. They just don't even, they're like, you just don't hear from them, and then next winter you'll hear from him again when he makes up another story. So it's frustrating, but it's funny, I guess. He's just kind of like
Yeah, no, basically you gotta laugh at some of this stuff. I know some people take it way too serious, what these guys are saying. And look, let's break down some of the tea leaves of what we know that lines up and that makes sense. That right now there are 5 teams that have made their bids so far: the Mets, the Yankees, the Toronto Blue Jays, the Boston Red Sox, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, Brendan Cuddy of The Athletic mentioned that there's going to be multiple rounds of gauging interest from teams and from Juan Soto and his camp with Scott Boras. So we think a decision is probably going to be made by the winter meetings. This all came down within the last week or so. Now, I really wish that the Mets wouldn't play this game. I know there is this tussle of, hey, we'll give you this offer. You go to other teams, see what they offer you, come back to us, and we'll up the offer. To me, when it comes to that, I know it's a whole thing about money, but that doesn't show me that, this team really wants the player. Yes, the money's going to come into the fact, but man, if it was me, if I was Cohen, I know it's not my money, but if I really want this player, if I really want someone, hey, what is it going to take to get this deal done so we don't have to do this runaround of, hey, you find out what you want, come back to us, we'll match it, we'll give you a little bit more. Let's get this deal done. I want you on this team. And I feel like that's more of, man, these guys really want me. But then also, it goes both ways, because Juan Soto has to want to be here as well, and not just solely for the money. And there were comments coming out from Boras of, we want Soto wants a team that's going to be ready to win and what they're going to do to win. I do find it a little hypocritical that he wants to go to a team that is going to have the funds to win, but then has to spend this AAV, the highest AAV in all of baseball, around 50 mil a year to try to get. And there's a lot of teams that are not going to be able to just do that stuff. So this is kind of the tea leaves that I've taken from it that I think are in play. Randy Miller, I think it was yesterday, or maybe it was late Friday of NJ.com.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, said on WFAN, and he's, the people were bringing up tweets that he said about Aaron Judge leaving to go to the Giants and all this other stuff. So,
I mean, he almost did, though.
I guess so. There's always going to be people that bring up these things that are like, oh, this is where he was wrong on this, so don't believe him on that. But he said that, obviously the Mets are in play, the Red Sox are in play. Funny thing is, he said that the Yankees will be outbid, which I do tend to agree. I think all teams will be outbid because the Mets have the most money, unless Cohen doesn't want to bid that high, and they will fall to 4th. That's the thing that I found funny. What do you make of these reports?
Look, I don't know what to make of that specific report, but Ibby just said it in the comments that it kind of aligns with what he's been saying and what I've been saying on Til Mets Do His Part for weeks. Look, this is not a Yankees podcast. Nobody cares about the Yankees' perspective of it, but I have tried to argue that the Yankees should not sign Juan Soto. because my thought process has been, can the Mets sign Juan Soto and Pete Alonso at the same time? They can. Can the Mets sign Juan Soto and Willie Adames? They can. Juan Soto and Alex Bregman? They can. Pick your person. The Mets can afford to do it. They have one long-term contract right now that is for a lot of money, and that is Lindor, and that is it. The Yankees are still paying Garrett Cole $30 million a year. They're paying Juan Soto, Aaron Judge $30 million a year. They're paying Giancarlo Stanton $30 million a year. They have a bad contract in Rodon. They have a bad contract in DJ LeMahieu. They have a bad contract for a lot of money with Marcus Stroman, even though it's a short-term deal. Like, where are the Yankees going to go? They're going to sign Juan Soto, and obviously they're going to sign other players. They have free agents to sign. They're going to have openings on their roster. But where else are they going? So if you're the Yankees and you're pitching to Soto and you give Soto $50 million a year, you're going to be like, okay, well, this is our team. It's you and Aaron Judge. And look, they might be the two best players in baseball. I understand that. But when you look at it, it got them to the World Series, but it still wasn't enough to win one. So where else are you going? I think when you're the Mets, you can sell. We can pay for you. We can afford you. Cohen can buy your, pay for your contract straight cash. It's not going to affect anything else we do. And we are going to move forward with a team that is built around you and Francisco Lindor, and we're going to let the other chips fall where they may. You know, they have this great deal that seems like a bargain in Senga. He's not going to opt out, obviously. Brandon Nimmo is a long-term contract, but it's not a lot of money in terms of baseball money and setting the market and resetting the market. So I just don't think that the Yankees, from a team building perspective, should pay Juan Soto $50 million, because I don't understand where else they go then. What else do they do? I mean, you could always trade for a guy. Like, I understand there's stuff that we don't know, but to me, it just doesn't make sense. I think the Red Sox are the bigger threat because they have kind of laid back and sat in the weeds and haven't spent money for the last whatever years. And so, look, I don't know if John Henry all of a sudden wants to spend money. It seemed like he didn't want to spend money. He didn't try to keep Mookie Betts when he had the chance and all that stuff. But I think that they're a better threat because I think they can boast the thing that the Mets can, which is sign this big deal, and then we will also go out and get other players.
Yeah. And I think the same thing for me falls with the Red Sox as well. I know they have all this money to spend, especially with the fan base that's very frustrated with what has happened in Boston over the last couple of years. But I'm a little shocked, and I find it hard to believe, that the Red Sox are this in on Soto and would consider going to the heights that Cohen would. Cohen won't be outbid by any team unless, he bows out. I mean, it's clear as fact, right? He has the most money of any of the teams in Major League Baseball. But how close really are they? And when I mean they, I mean the Boston Red Sox are taking that next step and being successful. I mean, I feel like the Yankees, although the Yankees, are tied into these contracts, they're definitely closer in making the playoffs. So they just came off the World Series.
Yeah.
I just find it hard to believe that the Red Sox are the destination that Soto would take. And I think it was a comment, Armand saying, John Henry's a fraud and a cheap of an owner. There was another comment by, I think it was Rosie K here. There's too much of it from multiple sources, having, David Ortiz involved to persuade, Manny Ramirez involved. I just don't think those are factors, just as much as I don't think Francisco Lindor going to talk to Juan Soto is going to factor into him signing. It's money, and is this team ready to win and take it to the next step? That's where I think the two big factors are when it comes to Juan Soto going to any of these teams.
Look, I agree with you ultimately, which is why you can't be confident because anything can happen in free agency. We've seen that before, but that's why I've felt so good about Soto going to the Mets since the offseason started. Towards the end of the season, I was a little pessimistic about it because the Yankees are going on this crazy run. They make it to the World Series. Juan Soto has a great year with them. He has a great postseason with them. And it's like, wow, he is making it impossible for them to not sign him. But when you look at it now, the Mets, if everything that you're hearing is what you're going to believe it and take it at face value, where money has always mattered. And, going to a place to continue and cement his legacy in terms of winning and personal accomplishment and all that stuff are the things that matter to him. The Mets are the best spot. The Mets are a better team than the Red Sox. I know the Red Sox have a better farm system. I don't care about that. Not that I don't care about it. It doesn't matter. You think Juan Soto's like, let me see your minor leaguers. Let me write down, and he doesn't care about that. And then the from just a team building opportunity, the Mets, like I said, have $175 million coming off the books. The Yankees can't boast that. The Yankees are going to have to blow past the luxury tax thresholds and everything in a way they have not since Hal has owned the team, to not only get Soto, but then to build a better team around Soto. And the Mets are poised to be able to do that better than I think any of the other teams. I also don't buy the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are like the East Coast version of the San Francisco Giants. Like, they have a ton of money. Nobody wants to take their money. I wouldn't want to go play in Toronto. It's complicated. The tax implications get more complicated when you're paying, earning American dollars in Canada. It's just, I don't see that being the case. He liked being in New York. It's close to home. He can fly home. He doesn't have to leave where, he's been living for the last year. If he bought a house, I don't know. So I think, to me, it always comes down to the Yankees and the Mets. And I just think that Steve Cohen is not going to be outdone. I just don't understand. I don't see how the Yankees are going to willingly match a dollar amount that the Mets can just go ahead and pay. I don't see it.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Gathering all this information and looking into it, I really think that the Red Sox would probably be the team that would fall to fourth for me, because I think that even though Hal may not outbid the Mets, I don't think he would like to be outbid by both the Mets and the Red Sox. So I agree with that point that, it would be Mets and Yankees. But, I'm going to throw the Dodgers in there. I know it's crazy, but with the way that they defer money and give bonuses out, the team is ready to win. They won already, and they have the best roster right now possible. The Mets have an up-and-coming roster, right? They made it to the NLCS. They have the money to get these people. So, the teams like the Red Sox, and I heard like them selling on, hey, we'll go after Vlad Guerrero, and we're going to get this pitcher and that pitcher. Until you get those players, it's kind of hard to sell me on going there. That's why I think the Dodgers are probably that team that may fall second if they don't get Juan Soto. And then it would be, obviously Mets. I still think he's going to be a Met. I really do. Mets, Dodgers, I think Yankees, Red Sox. That's how I would put it. But, I heard something on Michael Kay that was a little bit interesting to me. And he mentioned, could Soto be swayed by what is going on in LA with the super team? Would that sway him to be like, you know what? I don't want to go in the National League because, the Dodgers are going to be that team that's consistently there. That's going to be probably consistently a World Series. It could possibly have a dynasty. Now, who knows whatever happens in the postseason, but, the Dodgers are going to be that team to beat, like the Yankees were, in the 90s when they created their super team. So I'm wondering if that could sway Juan Soto to be like, maybe I'll stay in the American League.
People say that, and I'm trying to be delicate when I say this. If you're a professional athlete and you have been in the top 1% of professional baseball players in the world since you're 19 years old, do you think you get that way by being scared of other teams? I don't think you do. I don't. You're a competitor. Go out and compete and win. Beat them. The Dodgers didn't go 162-0 and then win another 10 games to win the World Series in a row without stop. Look, the Dodgers are a great team. I live out here in LA. I watch it every day. I have to see it. You know what I mean? They're objectively terrific. They are a model run franchise, which is a far cry from when Frank McCourt owned the team, and everything they're doing is terrific. Fine. If you want to go there and maybe it's a little bit of a softer landing spot because it's a little easier for you to win, I understand that. I wouldn't hold it against them, but I don't think you're going to look at the landscape and, as a professional athlete, as somebody who competes for a living and go, that scares me. I'm not going to go compete with that. That's scary. I don't see that. I don't think you can be as good as Juan Soto is at baseball or any sport and then be like, oh, but I'm afraid. Now, if you want to go there because you're like, it'll be easier, that's a little different because the team is stacked. So I don't see the Dodgers being a realistic option. I know they keep spending money and we think that they're done and they're done and they're done spending and then they're never done spending, but I don't see it. I think the Dodgers are in the mix to raise the price for everybody else. People are worried about, the Mets getting taken advantage of. I think the Dodgers are there to raise the price for the Mets and for the Yankees.
Some of the comments that I want to get into here, Ibby saying about, them talking with Ortiz that the percent of ownership is why Ortiz is pushing Soto. Rumor, I don't believe that Henry is willing to go the lengths it's going to take to close the deal. They have too much to do over there. And I agree, they have way too much to do over there. Brad saying, I'm tired of Yankee fans trying to sell the pinstripes in history. We get to hear a lot of that. Who cares? Most weren't alive when it was only 6 teams. So, and I guess players were plumbers and a whole bunch of other things back then.
Listen, it's true. That matters to Yankee fans. It doesn't matter to baseball players. It really doesn't. If you grew up a Yankee fan, maybe, but it doesn't matter. And these guys don't care. Like they did the same thing with Yamamoto. Like Yamamoto doesn't know who Yogi Berra is. He doesn't know, that doesn't matter. Selling the pinstripes to certain players doesn't matter. I would say to most players, but certainly, it's just, what have the Yankees done in the last, I know they just made it to the World Series, but they haven't won a World Series since 2009, right? Was that it? 2009?
Yeah, 2009.
So look, that's quickly becoming a long time ago. Yes, sure. What have the Mets done, right? The Mets haven't won a World Series in almost 40 years, but the Mets aren't trying to sell them on that. The Mets aren't trying to sell players on history. And, history matters to fans. History matters to the legacy of the ownership and the how much the brand is worth. History does not matter to Juan Soto. Juan Soto cares about how much money is going into his bank account, not how much money Hal Steinbrenner is going to make for signing Juan Soto. It's nonsense.
I think if you really gave some truth serum to Hal Steinbrenner, he really doesn't want to do this deal. He would if maybe Giancarlo Stanton's contract wasn't involved. Mm-hmm. But to be tied down to him, Soto, and Aaron Judge, they are not going to have a lot of money to be doing a lot more things. They need pitching. There's so much that team needs, that being tied down on those 3 players for the money that they're tied down for in the years, I think it would cripple the team. And I think in their heart of hearts, if they knew this, the Yankee fans would not want to be stuck in this Juan Soto deal. Mm-hmm. Considering that Juan Soto is not a great defender, right? I mean, you have him and Giancarlo Stanton having to vie for DHing. Aaron Judge is probably going to want to move to a corner slot in the outfield. So, look, it's just
it's bad team building.
It's
bad team built for the Yankees. It's bad. And I know he's great. He is great. I'm not trying to push down how good Juan Soto is, but it's bad team building for the Yankees. It just is. Aaron Judge is not going to be able to keep playing center field. You don't want him to keep playing center field. Yeah. You're going to have to move him to and I know they have basically an opening in left and all this stuff, but you're going to have to start thinking about that sooner rather than later. That's another thing. If he comes to the Mets, people are like, oh, well, you know what? You can put, you can move him to first base and this and that. Yeah, maybe eventually, but you don't have to. The Mets have the ability and the flexibility to kind of do whatever they need to do to make Juan Soto have a comfortable landing spot. That's really what it comes down to. You give him the money, sure, but you can also build the team around him. You can also give him the opportunity to become one of the greatest Mets of all time. You can also give him the opportunity to win more rings. You can also give him the opportunity to move positions as he gets older. There's just the Mets are just so poised to do this.
Yeah. It's right time, right moment for a team like the Mets. It's not the right time, right moment for the Yankees. Yes, I think it's more of for the Yankees and the Yankee fans. I think it's less about having Juan Soto be a part of this team and more of we can't lose this guy to the Mets. We can't lose this guy to the Red Sox. And that's not the way, like you said, to go about team building. And it will be a tough spot for them.
I think if he wasn't already on the Yankees for a year, the Yankees wouldn't even be in on this conversation, because the closest thing we have seen to this is when Bryce Harper became a free agent. And what was all the talk? That Bryce Harper loved the Yankees, wanted to go to the Yankees, perfect for the Yankees. The Yankees didn't even really get involved. Why? Because they already had Giancarlo Stanton. Well, to your point, my point from earlier, they have Giancarlo Stanton, they have Aaron Judge, they have Garrett Cole. Those are three $300 million contracts, or if you want to break it down into AAV, 3 contracts over $30 million a year. And Rodon is not far behind. He's like 27.5. And then you have a horrific contract to DJ LeMahieu. Like I said before, he's still got like 5 years left on it. Yeah. This is a lot of money locked up to some good players and also some bad contracts. Like Rodon does not deserve the money that he's gotten in terms of the quality of pitcher that he's been. Yeah, Judge deserves it. Stanton has been really good in the playoffs, but the Yankee fans hate Stanton 95% of the year because he's never healthy and he doesn't have good seasons. And Garrett Cole certainly deserves it, but he's a pitcher locked up for a lot of money. So, I don't see it. I really don't. I don't think the Yankees should be involved. I don't think if the situation was a little different, I don't think the Yankees would be involved. I think you're right. It's more about we can't lose this guy to the Mets.
Shout out to everyone in the chat. We got 435 people in this room. Make sure you're following and subscribing to the channel. Make sure you're following Til Mets Do his part as well. I want to get to some of these comments here. G Money Stack says he has a feeling that the Juan Soto bidding will drag into the winter meetings. I think it will end there, honestly. I think it will end at the winter meetings, and Scott Boras will put on some, a charade in some party to get this signed and sealed there, especially considering how free agency took him last year in the totally opposite direction that he wanted, with everyone signing, either during the season or right at the end of spring training. So we'll see where Juan Soto and how that ends up. But I think it ends fairly soon, within the next, definitely before Christmas. If it's not at the winter meetings, it's either, right at Christmas or right before Christmas. So I think that's where that ends. Buzz Bass saying the Mets have been very quiet, which is a good thing, which leads into Carlos Ramos's comment. The Mets conduct business professionally now and results speak for themselves. No more leaks, no more BS, just business like it should be. And I agree. I'm kind of happy that we don't get to hear leaks from the Mets, and you're hearing, all this stuff of him going to the Red Sox, what the Yankees are going to offer, what the Dodgers are going to do. Phillies are not in. The Mets, we haven't heard anything from him except for David Stearns doing, little business and trying to up the depth of what is this roster that the Mets have when it comes to the bullpen and other pieces as well. With they sign trading of Jose Siri and Joey Meneses. I tend to like this version of the Mets where we don't hear anything until it's signed, sealed, and delivered. Yeah, well, because I think before it was a lot of smoke and not a lot of fire.
Yeah, like especially pre-Cohen, right? Like pre-Cohen, I think we're talking about here, where it would be like the Mets are kicking the tires on this guy. The Mets are involved in this guy. The Mets are thinking about doing this. And then they never did any of it. So even though Cohen has owned the team for a while, and maybe, his GMs and his president of baseball ops that have been there before Stearns have not been the ideal people, the Mets have also, though, they've spent money, they've gotten players they wanted, they've brought back players they wanted to bring back. Like the Mets have done a lot, like very silently and strategically, just while he's owned the team. But I think a lot of us, obviously, I'm 38 years old. Like I go back to the Wilpons, they've owned the team for basically my entire life. And I think then that's when you saw a lot of this like posturing. It's like, oh, well, the Mets are doing this, the Mets are doing that. And it's like, you're like, yeah, right. The Mets aren't doing it. I've seen this before. So it's almost more frustrating to be constantly in the mix with rumors and then never come away with the player. If you're in the mix with rumors and then you actually get the guy, you're kind of like, okay, great, but I think there's a frustrating part of it where it was just like, I don't know what this is. I don't know. I just can't even, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and look, Carson brought up a good point here about it's Toronto that you brought up. Gosman and Springer chose Toronto over us, but the only thing they're missing is that neither of them are Boras clients. I can't think of any Boras clients that signed with Toronto. Toronto probably has the money to make the big deal, but they're just coming off of being in last place And, it's not like they are a team, like an awful roster filled team. They underperform to a high extent, and to be under the Yankees and Baltimore and the Red Sox, and even Tampa, who consistently finds a way every year to be a part of the playoff chat. I just, Toronto's just not the destination. It's just not.
I don't think it is. I mean, look, I've been to Toronto. It's a nice city. I've said this before. Toronto reminds me of it's like half New York, half London, and it has like none of the charm of either place, but all of the problems that both places have. And that's what it feels like when you go there. I don't know. I think Toronto is, I don't think it's this destination. Also, what are they doing exactly? Yeah. Are they going to keep Vlad Guerrero Jr.? I don't know. Are they going to keep Bo Bichette? I don't know. There's rumors that they're going to keep one or both, but I don't know. Let's see it. Sign one of them to an extension. Let me know that one of these players is here and is going to, hold down the team with Juan Soto. I don't know. And for everybody who's saying I'm whispering, yes, it's very early. It's 7:30 in the morning. And also my girlfriend is asleep in the other room. I'm not trying to wake her up.
The very quiet and toned down, Ibby, Light FM. We got the Light FM John right now.
Unless you guys can't hear me, then I will make sure to talk a little louder.
Well, Brad loves you dropping the gems right now, so gotta appreciate that. Gotta appreciate the gems being dropped. David Smith saying, "I want Juan Soto for the Mets, but I heard rumors he wants 3 opt-outs for that 12 to 15 contract. No way a 3-year opt-out, has to be at least 5-year opt-out. I think it's best for both the teams that are signing him as well as himself to opt out when he's like 29, 30, which would probably be around the 3 to 4 year range. And I'm actually okay with that. I honestly don't want to be bogged down on a 12 to 15 year contract for a guy that's not going to play defense right. to a great extent. He's really Starling Marte out there right now. And, that's an unhealthy Starling Marte, because Starling Marte, healthy in 2022, was a great defender. But, I don't want to be bogged down in the 12 to 15 year contract. So if they're opt-outs, I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it too. I know this is not a great answer for people asking these kinds of questions, but and I don't care. I'm not paying the contract. I'm not signing the contract. So I don't care if there's opt-outs. I don't care if there's deferrals. I don't care if it costs $600 million, $700 million. I don't care if you have to give him partial ownership stake in the Mets. It doesn't bother me. In my fandom, I just want the Mets to have the best team possible for as long or as often as possible to try to win as many championships as possible. I think that's what everybody loves to play GM. And that's why our show is always popping this time of year, because, the rumors, and we all do it. I do it. You do it. Ibby does it. Everybody wants to play GM. It's fun. It's exciting. I'm into it. But at the end of the day, you do have to remember that we're all fans, and who cares about the farm system? Who cares about what smart team building is? It's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to go and cheer for the team that's on the field and hope that they repay our fandom with winning. That's the end of the exchange. So yeah, it's cool when Mark Vientos comes up and maybe is a star. It's cool when you look down on the farm and you're like, wow, we have this, young group of players that could come up and do something. Okay, they have to come up and do it. Come up, do it, win. I don't really care about anything else. I don't care about opt-outs. I don't care how long the contract is. Whatever he wants, I would defer every dollar of the contract if he wanted it. I would give him an opt-out every year if he wanted. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, to you, to anybody listening, anybody watching, because it's not your contract.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think people lose sight of that sometimes.
Well, I am definitely not a prospect hugger. So if you told me you were going to trade this guy for Garrett Crochet, well, I don't know about Garrett Crochet, but there are other people out there that I would trade for, specifically in the Seattle rotation and stuff like that. How many times do we see a prospect come up here in a decade and make some noise as a Met? Maybe 3, 4. of the prospects that we've been all talking about in the top 25 on a yearly basis come up and do something. And when you look at a team, probably the Orioles are the best example of all these prospects coming up and succeeding and making this team a playoff team. But how many prospects were there in the Pittsburgh organization and Cincinnati that came up and were supposed to come up together and be this team, that this would be the time that they would turn this team around? And what happens? They either get traded or they become free agents, and they don't want to stay there because the team's not going to pay them the money to be there.
Yeah, look, again, we understand how baseball works. You can't have a $30 million player. I was just arguing it for the Yankees. You can't have a $30 million player at every position. So you do have to have a farm system. I understand that that's how this works, but you also just, again, as a fan, all your allegiance is to the team on the field, and you hope that they win. So I don't care where the players come from, and I want the Mets to have the best team on the field. If you're telling me that team has Mark Vientos on it, that's terrific. If you're telling me that team has Pete Alonso on it, that's terrific. If you're telling me that team has to go out and trade for Francisco Lindor, despite the fact that they had two shortstop prospects in Ahmed Rosario and Andres Jimenez, go do it. Go get the better guy. Go get the best
Get the
team
proven
you could
guy.
possibly. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So, I don't know. I'm with you. I don't subscribe to it. And one of the points that I've been trying to make about prospects, when you look at the Dodger model, this Dodger experience that we're all living in right now, the point I brought up to Ibby a couple weeks ago is you look at a player like Gavin Lux. When Gavin Lux was a prospect, a lot of people were like, this guy's going to be a stud. This guy's going to be their shortstop of the future. They're going to let Seager walk, and they're going to let this guy walk. And look, he's going to be the best he's going to be the best shortstop in baseball. He's not. But what he is a very good major league player. And you need those players too. So Luis Angel Acuna does not have to be a superstar. He does not have to be his brother to make positive contributions to this team that allow you to go out and sign and spend big money elsewhere. You look at the role that Gavin Lux played on this team, on the Dodger team this year. He did a great job for what they asked him to do, but he didn't have to come up and be a superstar because they had Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and this guy and that guy. So you don't want to put all your eggs in the prospect basket. And hell, we've been there and done that. Lastings Millage, Fernando Martinez, all these guys, even Alex Ochoa, and these guys that were supposed to be terrific baseball players. Yeah. This guy's going to be the savior. No. Just let them come up and be what they are. We all like Francisco Alvarez. I think that he had a down year. I think that he was hurt. I think he can be better. But even if Francisco Alvarez is just the kind of guy that we've watched so far in his career, he's still a very serviceable starting catcher in Major League Baseball. And that's enough because you have that guy cost controlled. It allows you to go out and spend $50 million on a right fielder. And again, I think that's something that people lose sight of over the course of, don't spend too much money here. Don't trade this guy. We still need to be smart. Let David Stearns be smart. You be a fan.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think fans tend to forget how long it has really taken the Dodgers to get to this moment in time. They're not just doing this over the last 2 or 3 years span. Yes, the big moves have happened, but this has been over a decade-long process for them to get to the point where they're just spending, and have all the deferrals and all that stuff. It took a while to get to that point, and now they've made moves here. They brought back Tommy Edman, who I think signed for 5 years, $74 million, the MVP of the NLC, as he completely destroyed us, that's for sure. And also, you look at some of the other moves that they made. Probably the biggest signing so far of this offseason was Blake Snell, and it does have implications when it comes to the Mets. 5 years, $182 million, a $52 million signing bonus, $26 million AAV with $13 million deferred. He was 5-3 with a 3.12 ERA last season. You look at their rotation now: Ohtani probably coming back next year, Yamamoto, Snell, Tyler Glass. Now they even have Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May coming back from injury, Bobby Miller too. So you look at what the the Dodgers have done this offseason. And it brings up a good point that Luis Morelli was talking about. Do you think that if Soto signs with the Mets, they go right back after the polar bear gives Soto protection in the lineup? Look, what the Dodgers had done proves to me one fact, that the Mets have to sign both Juan Soto and Pete Alonso. I think you and me have both been on this train that the Mets are going to spend like the Yankees did in 2009. Both of these players need to be Mets to even come close to competing, with this Dodgers lineup and Dodgers roster.
I completely agree. I said the other day that I think the best version of the Mets has both Juan Soto and Pete Alonso on it. You can't just look. If I can only pick one, obviously I want Juan Soto. Juan Soto is a better player than Pete Alonso. He's a better all-around hitter than Pete Alonso. But if you bring him on board, you lose, and you don't bring back Alonso, you lose everything Alonso offers. And I know that sounds like a very obvious thing to say, but you're losing 35 to 45 home runs immediately. Now, if you say, okay, well, Soto's going to hit those. Okay, well, who's going to hit the 40 that Pete was going to hit? Now, if your argument is Vientos can do it, because if you look at what he did in this past year, if you put that over a course of a full season, he's going to come close to 40 home runs. Sure. Okay. Go do it, though. I love Vientos. I love his bat. I've always loved his bat. I like what he has done and how he's been even better than we expected him to be. Pretty much all of us. But then you have to have him go out and do it. You're also asking a lot. People are like, just put Vientos at first base. Okay, so now Vientos has this unbelievable year where he comes out, he learns how to play third base, he inserts himself, becomes a staple in the Mets lineup. And now all of a sudden you're going to be like, okay, go move to a different position. Oh, and by the way, replace that player's all of his offensive output. You have to have the same year you just had. Actually, it's got to be better, because you have to cover for the fact that we don't have Pete Alonso, even if we do have Juan Soto. You have to build these deep lineups. Look at the Braves lineup. I know a lot of those guys were hurt. They have so many players. How many players do they have that can hit 30 home runs or more? 5? 6? Yep. Look at the Dodgers lineup. We've already seen it. We've already talked about it. They're a little top heavy, but they also do get contributions up and down the lineup from guys like Tommy Edman. So, I'm not writing off anything they do. Look at the Phillies lineup. Harper and Castellanos and Schwarber. And it goes on and on. I know that, what's his name? JT Realmuto is not the player he was 5 years ago, but these are deep lineups. You have to build a deeper lineup. Get Soto, get Alonso. And again, I don't care how much it costs, and I just want a good team on the field, the best team possible. So I think Alonso is as close. Soto to me is a must sign. You have to do it. He's so young. He's the perfect fit. All of that stuff. Spare no expense. With Alonso, I think you have to negotiate a little differently. I do think there's a ceiling. I do think there's a threshold, but he's close to a must sign too, because where else do you go? Christian Walker? Why are you going to pay Christian Walker for, let's just say it's 4 years into his late 30s, when he's 4 years older than Alonso? And the whole question that you would have with Alonso is, why are you paying Alonso into his late 30s? Well, because he's already done it in New York. He's already done it here. He's proven to be a better player year in and year out than Christian Walker. He didn't do it in a place where he bloomed late in a hitter's haven. Also, Christian Walker missed a bunch of time with an oblique injury this year. That doesn't get better as you get older. Alonso played all 175 games that the Mets played in, all of them. The best ability is availability. I don't understand. People go, he's going to break down. Where? What? Playing all 175 games means that he's going to break down? I don't understand the concept around this hate for bringing back Alonso. To me, Soto and Alonso it's the key to the entire offseason.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it has to be done that way. I don't see any other scenario that works where you throw in, like you said, Christian Walker, Willy Adames. I think it's these two guys, especially the fact that, Alonso has proven that he could play here. Both of these players have proven that they could play in New York. And that's the type of player that I want on this team. Shout out everyone in the chat here.
Everybody was, dogging Alonso, and I understand why. He did not have a good year. Not everybody has an unbelievable walk year. And I think he had a little bit of the stress and the pressure on him. But then when the chips were down, and how many times did he save our season with big hits? Alonso was the Alonso we knew in the playoffs. 100%. So, you have to really look at what you have and understand that the grass isn't always greener. Is he a perfect first baseman? No. Is he a bad first baseman? No. I don't understand why people think he's a bad first baseman. He's good around the bag. He saves people throwing errors. You don't have to be Keith Hernandez to be a good first baseman. He's better than people give him credit for. I don't know. People have just soured on him conceptually, because he's not Aaron Judge. He was never going to be Aaron Judge. So I don't understand where this hate comes from. And sometimes you have to do things just for legacy. I've said it a million times. The Mets are the team that traded Tom Seaver. They let Jacob deGrom walk. I understood why, but they still did it. Matt Harvey got hurt, and he was never Matt Harvey again. David Wright got hurt, and he was never David Wright again. They let Jose Reyes walk. They let Zach Wheeler walk. They let Darryl Strawberry walk, and then we know what happened with Strawberry, and we watched Doc Gooden's career fall apart in front of us. When are you going to sign one of these guys and keep these guys? You mean to tell me that they went out and they signed Jeff McNeil to the dumbest contract extension of all time, and now they're going to sit there and not sign Pete Alonso, who can hit 500 home runs for the Mets, something that no one's ever done, and also be protection for Juan Soto and also make your lineup deeper? The problem with Pete Alonso is not that he's not Aaron Judge. It's that the Mets don't have Aaron Judge on their team. Go out and get Juan Soto. Now you've effectively injected an Aaron Judge into your team, and let Pete Alonso be a guy who hits 240 with 45 home runs and knocks in 100 runs. It's so easy. I don't understand how people don't understand that concept.
A Hector of Blunt Thoughts, 1,000, not just 100, 1,000% agrees with you on Alonso and his return and the hate that Alonso gets. Mikey Red FL, if you bring Soto in and then you lose Pete's productivity, then it's only a minimal gain. That's something I think you've mentioned and that we both totally agree with here. Stevie Mack, he's here for Soto's plane watch party, ready for the plane to land, the watch party there. And Game for War, every year it's another free agent who causes free agency to give me fan fatigue. Thanksgiving before and after, just feeling stressed that I don't need in my life by people using the Mets to gain more money. Look, this is going to happen with these top-of-the-line free agents. It happened last year with Shohei Ohtani as well. I just wish that the Mets would, multitask sometimes. Get Sean Manaea done at this point, or even work on Pete. I think the fact that Scott Boras has a lot of the free agents the Mets either want, or I think to my extent as a fan that they want and need, belong to Scott Boras. So maybe, he's working more through that than anything else.
I think we get frustrated at the timing of baseball free agency. I think they need to figure out a way to make it more interesting. It drags on. And I know people have this thought that, the Mets or whatever team doesn't multitask. They don't do enough. But I think really it comes down to the fact that it's probably more like Scott Boras doesn't multitask. He wants Juan Soto to set the market. Now, Juan Soto is a different player. He's not going to affect Pete Alonso as a 1-for-1, but he is going to affect some of Pete Alonso's market. So if you're the agent for both, you're going to sign Juan Soto somewhere first before you move on to Pete Alonso. And look, when you're the big agent, you're the best agent in the sport or whatever, you're going to have a lot of these top guys every year. And I think that's what slows it down. I think people get mad at their team for operating slowly, but I think it's the agent who operates slowly. And look, we saw it last year. We already mentioned it. Boras doesn't care how long this goes on. He just wants to get the guys paid at the end of the day. So, it's frustrating. I understand the frustration. I want to talk about more things in the concrete than in the hypothetical too. But this is just baseball free agency, and it kind of sucks. The best baseball free agency we ever had was before the lockout, and they were just rushed to get everything done.
I think too, if you watch other sports, I know you're a big football fan. I haven't been paying attention as much to football. I know you haven't with what's going on with the Jets right now, but I don't know if their free agency is the same as like a hockey or NBA. And I mentioned this on the last week's episode. It really is a free agent frenzy like they talk about. Not so much in the MLB. Like these guys will sign really quick after the deadline begins or the free agency period starts. Most of the guys are done within the first day or two, definitely within the first week. And in baseball, it's just dragged out even past spring training, sometimes, as we saw last year, into the season. And it's just, to me, it's just ridiculous. Like you mentioned in 2022, when they did that little free agent period to get to the, I guess it was the lockout deadline. It just made everything a lot more fun to be involved in and to watch. And I really wish that they would kind of go back to something like that.
I do too. At the very least, I think you could maybe satisfy. It wouldn't be as exciting, but like, I think the cutoff should be spring training. I don't think you should be allowed to sign anybody after spring training that's not already been on your team or something like that. I think that would be a good way to, because they're never going to do like, oh, there's a 2-week period, after the World Series where you could sign players. It's never going to come down to that because, the contracts are all guaranteed and it's just a different animal than any of the other big four sports. But if I don't want guys signing in, like big players signing in spring training and into the season, I think is a detriment to the entire sport. And I agree with what Armand just said because of agents and cheap owners. It really is. It's because most of the owners in baseball don't want to spend money on any player. They just don't want it. Like, people are like, oh, could you believe Francisco Lindor makes more money than the entire Oakland A's like team? Yeah, I can, because they don't want to spend money on anything. Any player, anytime, anywhere.
And no salary cap or salary floor.
Yeah.
So it's just the way it is. It is. Blunt thoughts. Hector saying, are there rules to force teams to sign players quicker in basketball and football? What causes the rush in those sports? Well, there is salary floor. Definitely in hockey there is. And there's a salary cap as well as basketball. And I would assume too, because in those sports, less players are in the roster as well. It's a little easier to manipulate the contracts. And, football has they have their salary cap as well.
Well, and football has so many different things where it's like you can cut a guy after this date and before this date. And some people are restricted free agents and some people are unrestricted free agents. And everything comes with its own set of rules for when you're allowed to sign these guys. So when you think about the biggest players are the unrestricted free agents that hit free agency. This is taking the franchise tag and all that stuff out of the equation. You're only going to have a small number of those guys, and they are going to be the most coveted guys. And so they sign rather quickly. There's also a legal tampering period. So the short answer to Hector's question is, yes, there are rules basically to force these players and these teams to do business earlier. Whether, it's just the salary cap, the salary floor, the franchise tag, the cut dates, the this, the that. Like, there's so many things baseball just doesn't have. They just don't have it, and they don't care to have it.
Yeah, the owners and the Players Association really don't get along and won't put something together to kind of fix this type of situation. That's why there's so many lockouts in baseball. I mean, how many lockouts have we been through? Definitely in our lifetime. There's been way more than in any of the other sports. So I don't know if there's an easy fix to this or what, but we'll see what happens the next time. I assume that there won't be the next time there's a lockout discussion, but who knows? There's always room for some type of change or something. There should at least be a salary floor for these teams for sure.
Yeah, but the owners won't agree to a floor unless they get a cap. So that's the argument right there. That's why you hit the impasse, and then nobody wants to negotiate past that. But yeah, it's ridiculous. Listen, these teams all make $100 million split of the national TV revenue the day the contract is signed. So, it's $100 million a year. So before anybody buys a ticket, before anybody buys a jersey or a hat or concessions or whatever, at the very least, just invest the TV money in your team. $100 million. $100 million is a very fair payroll. And I think if you just invested that, you could say, okay, well, you know what? This team's actually trying. And that's why guys don't, you get guys like, on the back nine of their career that don't get deals at the end because it's like a team's like, oh, I'm not going to sign that. That could be a bad deal. I can't do that. What happens if I sign Justin Turner to a bad 2-year contract? I don't know, dude. It's 2 years. Like, grow up. Like, it's the cost of doing business as a baseball owner. You're a billionaire. I have no sympathy for you. You're a billionaire.
Yeah. Yeah, they make way, way, way too much money. Shout out chat, close to 600 people in this room right now. Make sure you like and subscribe to Subway to Shea, as well as Til Mets Do his part. And Luis Morelli here saying we still need starting pitching. I said I was not going to talk about Juan Soto this episode, and then we spent over close to an hour talking about Juan Soto because, what else is going on right now? But some moves did happen. We mentioned Blake Snell. Another kind of deal that kind of affects the Mets is UC Kikuchi, right? He signed a 3-year deal with the LA Angels, 3 years, $63 million. Not last season, 9-10 with a 4.05 ERA, but he was really good once he got traded to Houston. Kind of switch turned on for him. And these signings to me have severe implications on the Mets re-signing Sean Manaea. And as well as if they want to go after a guy like Luis Severino and bring him back as well. Manaea was 12-6 with a 3.47 ERA, Sevy 11-7, 3.91 ERA. I don't know if they bring both of these guys back. Probably going to be one or the other. Maybe they don't bring back either, and they try to go that route of trying to find that next guy. But that's a way I wouldn't continue to go every season. We could see a range for these pitchers between what Kikuchi got all the way to what Snell got as a max. I think Kikuchi's kind of like that starting point. Snell kind of the max for pitchers like this. Definitely Manaea for sure.
Yeah, I would love to have Sean Manaea on a 3-year, $20 million deal. But after Kikuchi got what he got, that's not going to happen. I could stomach Manaea on a 4-year, $80 million deal. So right around, the same AAV and give him an extra year and make it happen. After that, I start to get worried. And I think you're right. You don't want to go, look, being the guy who finds lightning in a bottle is something that Stearns is good at. It's something he enjoys doing. I think it's something that he is going to continue to do as the person in charge of the Mets. But you can't bank on that working out every single time, to your point. So am I going to be upset if he takes a flyer on a guy to, come out and be the 4th or 5th starter? No, but the Mets ran out of gas because the Mets didn't have horses in the starting rotation. I give a lot of credit to Sean Manaea. He had a great year. He ran out of gas in that last game. He pitched the most innings he's ever pitched in his life, and I think the most innings he's pitched in 4 or 5 years for the Mets. So that is a ton of work. So it's no wonder he was a little tired at the end. Now, look, it's a testament to the Mets training staff. And how often have we said that? My goodness, the training staff used to be the source of ire from all of the Mets fans. But to have guys come over here, and Stearns talked about it, have success with the Mets so that they know they could come there and they can use that as a place to rebuild their career. That's important. But you also need guys at the top end. I love Senga, but I'm not sure that Senga is a true ace. He's a good number
I don't
one.
think he is.
Yeah, he's a 1A in my opinion, maybe a 2. So now even Manaea, I think Manaea is best suited to be a 3. So I would have been all over Snell. Now that Snell's not available, I think Burns worries me a little bit on the years that he might get for his arm. But I think now you have to be in on Burns because I think the Mets need an ace so that they can put Senga in the 2. I think that then you can put Manaea if you bring him back as your 3. And now I think you're building a full-fledged rotation that can compete. To me, that's the thought process there. And then, to me, Severino is I don't want to disrespect anybody by saying spare parts, but I think he's a luxury, not a necessity. I'm surprised he didn't take the qualifying offer, but then when I see where the market is going, I'm not so surprised anymore. But the thing with Severino is who's going to give him a multi-year deal? I could see the Mets revisiting bringing him back on a deal that's a little bit richer than the qualifying offer when it's all said and done, and he takes another 1-year deal. I could see the Mets maybe giving him a 2-year deal where it's a little bit less money than the qualifying offer, but it gives him 2 years of security. I just don't think teams are lining up to give Luis Severino a multi-year contract. 2 years would be the max I would go for him. 4 years would be the max I go for Sean Manaea. And with Corbin Burns, man, I've said a lot that the 7-year deal scares me for a pitcher. I would have rather signed Snell for 4 or 5 than Burns for 6 or 7. But now you're kind of up against it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, would I sign him for a 6-year deal? I think I would.
There's really only 1 or 2 long-term pitching contracts that have worked out. The Scherzer deal back in the mid 2010s and Garrett Cole. Those are the 2 deals that have really worked out where you gotten the most out of those contracts. Can you get that from Corbin Burns? I'm not sure, but like you
I don't
said,
think so.
The Mets are pigeonholed right now. Their backs are against the wall when it comes to pitching. So they're going to need one of these top starters to sign, whether it's a Burns or a Fried, or maybe they go for a trade. And they're going to be spending some money on this pitching, which, brings me to this next pitcher. And man, it's going to sound so hypocritical of me because I wanted this guy off the team mid-year. And then he comes in September, gives up only 3 earned runs, has probably the best September out of any of the pitchers, and then goes into October and has 2 really good starts in must-win games for the Mets. And that's Jose Quintana. Like, could this open up a pathway to bring him back to be that back end starter? Is it almost better to bring him back? I don't know. I'm kind of warming up to the idea of it for a year deal or something like that. It's just crazy to give these starters so much money when you got a guy who, I guess is a quality starter. Look, they put him in a bad spot this season to be the ace of the staff to start the year. He was in a really bad spot. And then, he's had that rough first half, comes on in the second half and really turns it on.
I wouldn't. I don't know that Quintana has the stuff anymore. Like I know what he did in the second half and I'm really appreciative of it. I wouldn't go that route. And if I were in charge, I look, would I sign Quintana to a 1-year deal before I signed Severino to a multi-year deal? If you're asking me that, I would do it. But I just think everything being equal, I don't know. I think it's time to move on from Quintana. I just want guys with better stuff. I think a lot of times, the stuff gets overblown. I don't want to be this guy who's like obsessed with radar guns and velocity because I'm not that. You do have to know how to pitch. But like Quintana's one of those guys that if everything is perfect, he throws 7 shutout. And if everything is not perfect, he can get bombed. And to me, that's just he's not. At this point in his career, he's not a winning player in the rotation. I know what he did in the second half, but I thank you for your service. I don't think I would bring him back.
Well, you got other names in here. Aaron Manning mentioning a guy like Matthew Boyd for the starter option. Armand mentioning Cal Quantrill. You also have in-house guys. I'm pretty sure David Peterson is going to get the opportunity to be that 5th starter. I mean, he had a great season this year coming back from that hip surgery. I want to get to a point where we're not having to rely on Tyler McGill to come up here and make multiple starts because we know what Tyler McGill is, unfortunately. David Peterson has just a little bit more of an upside to me when it comes to being a starter. And also now we've seen him that he could be a reliever as well. So him in the rotation or being a reliever, I think fits better for the Mets. It's just like Patty mentioned, so McGill gets 9 lives when it comes to this team.
Yeah.
I want to avoid that. I really do.
Yeah, I don't think you can go into, McGill's got to be starter number 10 on the depth chart, starter number 8 on the depth chart. He's got to be pretty low. I think even 8 is too high because a lot of teams will use 8 starters over the course of a season just with injuries and extra guys needed, double headers, whatever the case may be. So, I think McGill should be in the bullpen. I think they couldn't really do it properly and effectively in a pennant race in the second half of the season. I think McGill should be in the bullpen exclusively from Jump Street. I think that they should shorten him up. I think his stuff would play up if he only had to pitch an inning or two. I think he could throw 100 miles an hour. You can make him a long man if you wanted to. But I just think that he's better served as a non-rotation option, period, full stop. I don't want to see McGill in the rotation anymore.
Yeah. It feels like he does this comment here feels like McGill shows flashes sometimes, just needs a consistent role. I don't know if that, this guy has gotten so many more opportunities, I think, than any pitcher has gotten. Yes, he had a great September, but then, you throw him back into, the bullpen in October, try to help us out here, and it's kind of the same stuff just happens over and over and over again with a guy like Tyler McGill. Like you said, he's got to be down in the depth chart when it comes to being a starter. Maybe he comes out and becomes a one of those long man relievers, like Armand said. But I don't want to have to rely on him. Definitely at the start of the season, if something happens, like we can't control injuries and stuff like that, and we need to go to him, it's good to have, an arm down there. But man, I think we have to start striving, especially for a team that wants to make it to the World Series, for a little bit better, or maybe a lot better.
You've got to raise the ceiling of this team. I think we learned in 2024 is that the Mets did a really good job, as Ibby would say, on the margins. They raised the floor of this team, which is also very important, right? Like if you want to play this out like a video game, it's better to have, players that have an 85 rating than it is players that have a 75 rating. And the more, they don't have to be great, but they need to be better. And I think for a while, the Mets were kind of this more boom or bust team. And I think when you talk about building a consistent winner, which Cohen has talked about, which Stearns has talked about, I think you have to raise the floor. That is very, very, very important. That's how you make the playoffs, 10 years in a row, and you do all this stuff, like never having a losing record in 30 years, like the Yankees and stuff. Like you have a floor that is higher than other teams. But the Mets now, and this is where the Soto and Alonso talk together, and you and I talking about a 2009 Yankees like offseason, you have to raise the ceiling. Where is the ceiling on this team? Right now, Lindor is excellent. We see a budding star in Vientos. I didn't freeze. That's it. Pete Alonso's not on the team right now. Brandon Nimmo is very, very, very good, but he had a down year. I think Alvarez is going to be a star, but he had a down year. And Mark Vientos, you have to hope that he does it again. Kodai Senga's coming off of an injury. Diaz is coming off of a year where he was hurt and, ineffective at times. I think probably trying to build back from being hurt and, kind of just getting back into a regular routine. Do I think that some of these guys will bounce back? I do. Do I think that the Mets have talent? I do. But the Mets objectively don't have as much talent as the Braves. They don't have as much talent as the Dodgers. No one does. They don't have as much talent, as the Phillies. They just don't. You have to raise the ceiling for these guys. That's why I say go get Juan Soto, go get Pete Alonso, go get Sean Manaea, and go get Corbin Burns. Like, do I think that that's ridiculous? I don't. Not the way the Mets are positioned right now. I think the Mets need to spend money on players that are right in front of them. The opportunity is right here, right now. I tweeted this out the other day, and I stand by it. And it's like, I'm not trying to say he's an old man, but Steve Cohen is now basically retired from his job. He's 66 years old. He has $21 billion in the bank. He bought this team as a passion project. He's going to try to sign Juan Soto for 15 years. Okay, 14 years, whatever. When he signs Juan Soto, at the end of that contract, Steve Cohen is going to be 80 years old. Who who cares? Go and try to win. That's why I admire what the Dodgers are doing. They have built towards something. They got Ohtani, and once they got Ohtani, they're like, you know what? We'll deal with the salary luxury tax implications 10 years from now. Maybe we'll win 10 World Series. They probably won't, but you know what I'm saying. We're going to try because it's all right in front of us. The Mets have this opportunity to just build a team now that's great. Go build it. I don't care about the luxury tax. I don't care about the deferrals and Bobby Bonilla Day. I don't care about the price that Steve Cohen's estate is going to have to pay to Juan Soto in 40 years. I don't care.
Yeah. Do it has to be done. Last year was the evaluation year, right? We didn't know what was going to happen coming off of that awful 2023. They did the evaluation and they got even farther than I think anyone expected. I don't even think the ownership, David Stearns, thought they were going to get that far, that deep into the postseason. And they did. A little bit of magic happened to be a part of that. But once you get there, it's now time to improve and take it to the next level and see where you can go. And that's with, getting Soto, starting it off, getting Soto and bringing Pete Alonso back and getting this rotation in order. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Appreciate all the great comments and questions that you've thrown at us here. I want to talk about top 25 MLB free agents because Mark Feinstein had wrote an article. I would assume is more towards the beginning, but tends to be updated with the way the signings have gone, like Snell, Kikuchi. So there are some players I want to talk about and see if they're fits for the Mets here. So I have the article. I want to share the screen up here. Still working on figuring out how to share screen. And there we go. Let me see if I got the right. I don't even know if I have the right screen up.
I see it.
You see it? All right, perfect. But everything is like so small because I'm only working out of my laptop. So it looks a lot smaller than it usually does. But you can see it perfectly, and that's perfect right now. So we got, obviously, Juan Soto is the number one guy that we're all interested in bringing in here and all want here to be a Met. So we talked about him for an hour. We can go past him. Corbin Burnes, right? We talked a little bit about Corbin Burnes here, guy that we want to be on this roster. Like, what is the limit you're willing to go with a guy like a Corbin Burnes?
Man, ideally 6 years, but he's probably going to get more like 7. So just being realistic. Again, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, but there's John, the fan, who says, I don't care what any of this costs. I don't have to pay it. Build the team. So that guy has no limits. I don't care. Sign Corbin Burnes to a 40-year contract. Doesn't matter to me. But then there's the, guy who's on this show, the guy who has the platform and trying to realistically, read the tea leaves and build a team. To me, God, it would be really hard for me to sign a 7th year for Corbin Burnes, but that might be the thing that gets it done. Armand is saying 5 years, $200 million. Maybe you load the deal. You just pay more in AAV, so that you can pay a little less in terms of years. But I don't know if he would take that. If he's got a 7-year deal on the table, he's not going to take a 5-year deal. So I'm just gonna say sweet spot for me would be 6 years. Would be where I'd like to end that, but I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, especially with him being under Boris, they're gonna milk that contract for a long time, and to see if Snell got 5 years, 182. I'm expecting at least 2 to maybe even 3 more years for a guy like Corbin Burnes. I mean, you have to kind of think that that's where that's going to go with him. Roki Sasaki. If the Mets could get Roki Sasaki, I think it would be a coup because he's only going to be coming in with the minor league deals, not the same as Yamamoto. I know a lot of people saying that he's going to the Dodgers as the end all be all. But man, if they could get Roki Sasaki, I think that helps out not only with this rotation, but just free agency in general for the Mets.
Yeah, it does. Look, I'd be lying if I said I knew a lot about him. He's a young player from a league that I don't watch that's on the other side of the world. So I know what everybody says about him. Yeah, I think it would be a boon if they were able to get him. I think it would be a great kind of little steal and kind of get him away from the West Coast. I think he's probably, because he's a young guy, because he's posted early, because he's coming over early, I think the Mets have as good a chance as anyone because they've got a legit Japanese star on their team. So I think it's going to come down to the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Mets. The Padres have Darvish, the Dodgers have Ohtani and Yamamoto, and the Mets have Senga. So I think any team can sell him on, hey, you're going to come over here. It's going to be different. You're a young guy. You'll adjust. And oh, by the way, we have a countryman who has come over here and succeeded at this level that can help you. Obviously, nobody else is Ohtani, but and Darvish has had a great career, but having Senga definitely helps. So yeah, I think I would just leave it there.
And just seeing what Hefner and crew has been able to do with Senga and transitioning him to the major leagues, I think is a big plus for the Mets. Fourth guy on this list of Blake Snell, he's gone. Let's go 5. Alex Bregman.
No,
absolute no for you.
Absolute no. I don't think I know he had a little bit of a bounce back in the second half of the year. He has not had a great year since 2019. He's got the short porch in right field with the Crawford boxes for most of his career.
You don't get that in Queens.
No, couldn't even play third base down the stretch. I think because of injury, right? So no, to me, Bregman is I wouldn't touch him with a 10.5-foot pole.
Yeah, G Money Stacks also agrees. Wouldn't touch Bregman either. Number 6, Max Fried.
Yeah, I mean the Mets need a top end starter, so I'm not sure that I would prefer Burns over Fried. I like Fried. Yeah, Crawford boxes are in left field. That's what I meant to say, Armand. Thank you. But I think I got used to saying short porch in right field for the Yankees. But yeah, thank you. Look, the Mets can't afford Ant to be out on any starting pitcher who could potentially be at the top of the rotation. That means Corbin Burns for a long time. That means, for a long contract. That means Max Fried at whatever he might get. That means you can't balk at the asking price of a Garrett Crochet or whoever else, might become available in the trade market. The Mets are not in a place with their starting pitching if they're trying to get back to where they were, which is the NLCS, and advance past that, which is something Mendoza and Stearns both said out loud in public into microphones and cameras. They can't be out on any starting pitcher that can go to the top of the rotation.
Abby thinks Fried is set for Boston. Would be a guy that would go there. With what Stearns has talked about from last offseason to now, he doesn't want to give any pitchers more than the 3 or 4 year deal. But does he make exception this offseason with a guy like Corbin Burns or Max Fried? Especially when you gotta have to sign Soto. I think you gotta have to sign Alonso. And if he brings those two in, does that take him out of the running for a top end starter? I don't know. Do you think any of these guys, whether it's Fried or Burns, one of them ends up as a New York Met?
I don't. I thought Snell was the most likely because I just thought, and I tweeted it after it happened, I would have given Snell that deal. I think a 5-year deal for a pitcher like Snell is palatable. It's a little bit past what Stearns would want to do, but you're getting an ace for a 5-year deal. I think that made sense. I don't think he's going to have the stomach for a 6 or a 7, or like you said, maybe even an 8-year deal for Corbin Burns. And I don't think that's smart. Fried scares me a little bit. I think he will get less years. So I think maybe Fried is a bit more likely, but he's also a less of a sure thing. So, and I would rather see them get, the offense. I think you can figure out a way to put a pitching staff together, hoping, you go to a 6-man rotation, you put Senga at the top, maybe you bring back Minaya, and Severino. I think you can win with that if you have enough in your offense, like a deep team, and then you can acquire something if you need it at the deadline. So I would rather see them go the offensive route. If in terms of spending big money, it's also easier to predict what offense is going to do. It's also easier to stomach those big long-term contracts for offensive players, especially when you're talking about one of them being a 26-year-old person who's on the way to the Hall of Fame. So, I don't see them getting, gun to my head, I don't see them landing any of these starting pitchers, especially now that Blake Snell's not an option.
Anthony Santander, he's 7th on this list. Now, is this the option that happens if Juan Soto does not become a Met? Do you immediately turn and try to bring in Anthony Santander from Baltimore?
I like Santander. I think he would be a nice poor man's Soto in terms of the ability to hit the home run and drive in runs. It all depends on the contract for Santander. It really does. If I were David Stearns and Juan Soto does not come to my team, I would investigate trying to sign Santander, but I can't give him I'm not signing him till he's 37. He's 30 now. It would have to be like a 4-year deal max. Maybe you could do a 5-year deal, just sign him till he's 35, and then that's it. But again, I don't know if that gets it done. That's the wishful thinking part of it. Do I think the Mets would have a good offense if they had Santander and Alonso back, added to Vientos and Nimmo and Lindor? And I do. I think Santander is a fit if they don't get Soto. I just don't know how realistic it is, knowing that you're probably going to want to give him really 4 years, I think would be the max that you'd want to give him. I think if you had to give him 5 to get it done, you could probably just look away and do it. But I do think just as a fit perspective, I think, he's a fit if they don't get Soto.
He's definitely not signing before Soto's done. He's definitely going to bounce off of whatever Soto gets. And I don't know. Is he a Boris guy? Does anyone know if he's a Boris guy?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Sure,
I don't think
he's a Boris guy. Anyone in the chat knows. But
I could see him going to the Blue Jays. I could see him going to the Giants. They're not listed there, but that's just what it feels like to me, taking that money, from a team that's really dying to spend it.
Yeah. We've already said yes on Pete Alonso, so there's no need to continue on that. How about, this goes back to the Alex Bregman discussion as well, because, and what you mentioned earlier about moving a guy like Mark Vientos to first base, which I don't want to do. I don't want to move Mark Vientos. Bring in a guy like Willy Adames, who's only played 10 games at third base, and
he's never played third base. He's played third base. He's played 10 games at second base. He's never played third base in the major leagues.
Yeah, Adames is a no for me, just on that fact alone. You talk about a team and what David Stearns is trying to put together in run prevention, and I think this just messes with that whole concept. I think the better defensive alignment is with Alonso, who's not the greatest first baseman, but serviceable. Definitely serviceable. And the same thing goes along with Mark Vientos at third. And then, you have the great defense up the middle with Francisco Lindor and whoever it is that's playing second base that works well off of him.
Hopefully Acuna. I would like to see Acuna get some burn. I think the Mets, we're probably not going to have a chance to get to this, but I think the Mets should trade Jeff McNeil, even if they have to eat money, and that would allow them to re-sign Jose Iglesias, which I don't think is a massive priority. I think sometimes you have to let the lightning in a bottle go, but I think then Iglesias becomes your kind of stopgap platoon player, and you get to actually see what you have in Acuna. You have those two guys kind of split second base, but in order to do that, you have to get McNeil off the roster. So to me, that's tangential to the Adames conversation. I think Adames fits the team as a hitter. I do. I'd rather have Adames than Bregman. I think he's a clutch bat. I think he's got good pop. I think as a hitter, he fits. With you though, I don't want to put a guy at third base who's never played third base before. Do I think he's athletic enough to do it? Sure. He plays shortstop in the major leagues. He can probably play third, but I don't really want to pay a guy to change positions. This is not an elite top tier player. You're probably going to have to pay him a little bit more like a shortstop to play third base, because he's going to have offers to play shortstop. So, to me, I think asking him to move is foolish. I also think it's foolish to move Vientos. I don't think Vientos is ever going to win a Gold Glove at third base. I don't think he'll ever be that consistent. But look at the strides that he made. Sometimes you just have to reward guys. I think with another offseason playing third base, I think with more tutelage from Lindor and the coaching staff, I think he will become a good third baseman, good enough to play third base at the major league level every day. I would also say, Ant, he's already good enough to play third base every day.
Absolutely.
I know he's going to make his mistakes. Sometimes his footwork isn't perfect. I think if you move him to first base, you lose his best defensive asset, which is his arm. He has an absolute cannon. And then he has to learn a new position and fill in for, the best offensive player that the Mets have ever developed, probably. It's him and Strawberry, basically, and Wright. But in terms of power, it's Alonso. Alonso's the guy with all the juice. So I wouldn't sign Willy Adames to move Mark Vientos. I think that's a foolish deal. I think keep Vientos at third, re-sign Alonso. Look at the deal that Adames is going to get. Just give that deal to Alonso. I don't understand it. I don't get why. What was the rumor deal? It was like 165 million or whatever.
Think so. Yeah.
Just give it to Pete, or give Pete 10 million more. Give him 175 million. Like, why are people trying to sign Adames when you can just sign Pete? It's the same thing with the Christian Walker conversation. You're going to have him when he's 38 years old. Just have Pete when he's 38 years old. Who cares?
Yeah, I think it's a disservice to Mark Vientos to not allow him to come into spring training as your third baseman.
I agree.
I think it's a huge disservice after, like you said, all the strides he made, after working very hard with Francisco Lindor. He has to be the guy that has that opportunity to be the third baseman over, the Brett Beattys of the world and whoever else they have, even Ronnie Mauricio as well, who's going to be coming back from injury. I think it's Mark Vientos' job to lose at third base.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Sure.
I already said what I want the Mets to do. Bring back Alonso, keep Vientos at third. But if for some reason the Mets need to add offense and Alonso is not coming back and they are dead set on moving Vientos to first base, I would rather trade for Nolan Arenado than sign Willy Adames, because you already know what Arenado is getting paid. The Cardinals, the Rockies are already paying some of it. The Cardinals are going to have to pay some more of it in order to trade him. He's taken a step back as a offensive player, or at least had a down year offensively. He can still play third base at a very, very, very high level. And then you're looking at a situation where, okay, you are getting a plus defender at third base, and you're hoping that he can do let's say 75% of what he used to do offensively while not having to move positions. To me, that makes more sense than signing Willy Adames. Plus, I don't know how many years that Arenado has left, but it's not a ton. It's certainly less than whatever deal you'd have to give Willy Adames. So if you were dead set on moving Vientos, especially if Alonso doesn't come back, go get Arenado. That makes so much more sense than trying to convince Willy Adames to play third base.
Yeah, Nolan Arenado's name is going to be swirling in the trade rumors this offseason. So the Mets have to get creative, right? If they lose Pete Alonso, definitely going to have to get creative on how they field the rest of this roster. And Nolan Arenado could be a possibility if that tends to happen. Number 10
Armand just put in the chat, he has 3 years, 74 million left.
Not bad.
Rockies are paying 5 million on each of the next 2 years. Ibby, my co-host, is saying he is washed. He might be. He might be, but I would rather roll the dice on the 3 years left with him than giving Willy Adames 7 years.
How about a guy like Jack Flaherty? Look, we already talked about probably not getting Burns, Max Fried. Jack Flaherty, who I thought was going to stay in LA because that's where he's at from anyway. But with Blake Snell being signed, I think that's him, as well as Walker Buehler. I think they are out. Is Jack Flaherty a guy you would go out to? He had a really uneven postseason, really good in some starts, really bad in other starts. And that tends to be the type of pitcher that he is. I don't know. I don't think I'm in on a guy like Jack Flaherty.
I'm not all in on Flaherty, but I think Flaherty is more likely than Fried or Burns, especially now that I didn't think the Dodgers were going to get Snell or Burns. Maybe I thought they would get Fried. So now that they've gotten Snell, I think you're right. I think it takes Flaherty off for them. So if it's like a 2-year deal, I could see the Mets being in on Flaherty. And I wanted the Mets to trade for Flaherty at the deadline. I thought he would have been a nice fit. So I could see them being in on him.
Let's see, number 11. This is a guy that I kind of want. I know the Mets don't spend on relievers, but he takes care of two, big things that the Mets struggling. One, he's a lefty. That's Tanner Scott. And two, he could either be a setup guy or help out when it comes to closing with Edwin Diaz. I mean, look at how much they stretched out Edwin Diaz in the postseason. I don't want Edwin Diaz coming in the 6th or 7th inning of games anymore if he is my closer. 8th inning, fine. To get 6 outs, sure. But him coming in the 6th inning to get 1 or 2 outs because, obviously crushes against a guy like Schwarber, you have to be able to rely on your other relievers to get these important outs. And I think the Mets need at least one more top-end reliever when it comes to their bullpen. And we've seen how the Dodgers put together their bullpen with their top guys. I think Tanner Scott should be a guy that they should, definitely consider, especially if the starting rotation guys tend to work out.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's tricky because it's hard to see Stearns given a big deal to a guy like Tanner Scott. But I think the fact that he's a lefty really helps. I think you kind of nailed it. And I think being a lefty and being somebody who can close games makes him a really good fit for the Mets. The Mets are going to be bringing back Reed Garrett. They decided to tender a contract to Sean Reed Foley, who I think when he's healthy is a good option. Nunez looks like he's on the bounce back. The Mets have some pieces in the bullpen to go along with Edwin Diaz. I think they need another plus arm, and I think Tanner Scott fits the bill. It's weird. I don't know. It's hard to predict free agent relief pitchers, but I think Tanner Scott is somebody that I would like to see the Mets be in on. Again, he's a reliever. He's 30. There is a ceiling to the negotiations for me, but I think that they should be in on him. I think he fits the team very, very, very well.
Going to number 12. How about a guy like Shane Bieber for the rotation? A guy that's probably, working his way back from injury. He's most comparable, probably, on the comeback trail to a guy like Luis Severino, who, had a hard time last year. Not last year, the year before.
Yeah. This makes sense. I think we're starting to get into the territory of the guys that you could see the Mets really getting. I think he makes more sense even than a Flaherty necessarily, because let's say the Mets do give Manaea what he wants. They sign Manaea and they're like, okay, we have Senga, we have Manaea. They probably slow play the market with Severino and they see if Severino is going to come back or whatever. They have Peterson. They do have Paul Blackburn coming off of the surgery, the spinal surgery and stuff like that. I could see them, Shane Bieber, former Cy Young Award winner at 30 years old, coming off of surgery, feels like a David Stearns signing. It just does. Now he's not going to be a guy that you can bank on because he's probably not going to be ready till the second half, like Armand just said. But I could see him getting a deal from the Mets. I think this feels like a Stearns guy.
Now, Armand's saying that probably a 2-year deal like Woodruff because he'll be back in the second half. So this may be. I wanted the Mets to go after Woodruff and stash him away last season. I thought because he was a Stearns guy that probably that would happen, but they ended up signing him in Milwaukee. Maybe they do this with Shane Bieber coming in. Number 13, Christian Walker.
No.
If they don't get Pete Alonso, Christian Walker, no.
Absolutely not. I said on Til Mets Do last week that I would rather sign Carlos Santana to a 1-year deal at almost 40 years old than I would sign Christian Walker to any deal longer than 1 year. So I will stay, I'll maintain and stay steadfast with that. I don't like Christian Walker as a player. I think I don't think he's a good fit.
I really do think the Mets are going to sign Alonso, so I'm just going to completely pass over Christian Walker. I don't think he's leaving. I really don't think. I'd be shocked if he leaves. Number 14. This is an interesting one. Nathan Eovaldi. I think this is a guy that I've wanted for a couple of years now, and I think that's someone the Mets should be interested in getting. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a contract around what Blake Snell got.
In AAV or length? Because he's 5 years. Okay. You think he'll get a 5-year deal to take him till he's 40?
What? So you're thinking what, more of a Kikuchi type deal?
I think he's a 3-year deal guy, which
Okay.
I would be interested. I think Eovaldi is like to me, he's like a poor man's ace. Like, you know what I mean? He's got like this electric stuff even after I think he's had 2 Tommy John surgeries, if I'm not mistaken. He might have had 3. He's had 2 for sure. But yeah, like even what it says here, like proven postseason performer. He's got a couple World Series rings. He's thrown a lot of innings. He does have some electric stuff. I think you can put him, if you're putting together a rotation that doesn't have a true ace, or if you're saying that Senga is your ace, I think Eovaldi fits. He's the kind of guy that maybe I could see them doing, like signing Minaya, signing Eovaldi, and then signing like Shane Bieber to that 2-year deal instead of bringing back Severino. I could see that being the thing that they do.
Yeah.
Again, the Mets need starters, so any of these starting pitchers that pop up on this list, I'm not really going to say no to, honestly.
Definitely for sure for Eovaldi. We'll see where he goes. Here's now like the third in line of outfielders, right? You got Soto, you got Santander. Where does Teoscar Hernandez fall for you? Let's say they don't get Soto again. Do you prefer a guy like Teoscar Hernandez over a Santander, or is he, like I said, is he like that now third in line guy?
I would rather have Santander. Teoscar Hernandez scares me. He feels like a guy who's like,
very Jekyll and Hyde, right?
Yeah, great with the Dodgers. It feels like he's destined to go back to the Dodgers. I can say this pretty confidently. I don't want Teoscar Hernandez. If they don't get Soto and they don't get Santander, I would look in a different direction than Teoscar Hernandez. He worries me too much.
Michael Wacha already signed.
Right.
Haesuk Kim, I'm just gonna go over that. Carlos Estevez for the bullpen. Now I know he gave a big grand slam to Francisco Lindor, but when you're talking about adding to this bullpen, just like I prefer Tanner Scott because he's a lefty, but this is another guy who's closed games out and has that experience to be setup man and maybe take some saves away from Edwin Diaz when he's tired. I would consider a Carlos Estevez.
I would too. I don't have much to add because I think you nailed it. I would prefer Tanner Scott, but I'm not going to say no to a player like Estevez. Yeah, despite the fact that he did give up that bomb to Lindor.
And what was that? That was also him, like Edwin Diaz coming in to the 6th inning to try to save a game. Like, I want the Mets to kind of try to avoid that stuff. I definitely want more in line of the bullpen that we saw from LA in the postseason and how they were able to put their situation together. Clay Holmes. I'm going to say yes. He's not going to be asked to close. We saw what he could do. I mean, he was a good closer for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Lost the job. Went into being middle relief and pitched well. The Mets are going to need arms in the bullpen. And I know that there's all these guys that David Stearns is gathering up and getting. But if you told me Clay Holmes is there to replace a guy like, Drew Smith,
Yeah.
I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's so hard to predict relief pitchers, and it's so hard to say no to pitching when your team needs pitching. So he wouldn't be a priority for me, but I'm not going to be upset for him. If you have Clay Holmes, if you're telling me Clay Holmes is in your bullpen instead of Drew Smith, instead of Adam Ottavino, those guys, sure, sign me up for that. Also, I don't think it's going to be we're getting into the range now where, especially relief pitchers, these are not big deals, right? So like, I would consider it. I would. I'm not thrilled, but I feel better about it than some of the other guys we've had.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Patty asking, is Drew gone? He is a free agent, but he also just had the Tommy John surgery, so he's going to be out for the entire year. That's what, right? Like, he had Tommy John surgery this year, right? He's out for the entire year, I would assume.
He did have Tommy John, but I don't remember the timing of the surgery. Maybe like a second half player, but it's not somebody you're going to bank on. And
it was after June, because I remember him getting the final out in the London series.
You're right.
So he's going to miss at least half the season.
At least half the season. So it's not somebody you can bank on. For all intents and purposes, yes, he's gone.
Yeah. We passed over Kikuchi because he's signed. Gleyber Torres, I don't have any interest in.
He's just not a
second baseman. Yeah, he's just not a fit.
He's not a fit.
I just don't think he's a fit from what we've seen in the dugout and a vibe type guy either. Tyler O'Neill.
Tyler O'Neill is, I'll put it this way, maybe more intriguing
than Teoscar?
Yes, more intriguing than Teoscar Hernandez. So that's where I would rank him. Like, I wouldn't run out to get him, but I would be more interested in him on a shorter deal than whatever Teoscar Hernandez is going to get.
Well, he had 31 home runs last season, as you see here, for the Red Sox. But then, he's struggled a couple seasons with St. Louis. So it's like, which one are you getting? Right? Like, which is the Tyler O'Neill that you're getting to be a part of this Mets outfield, who already has, Brandon Nimmo, who's had his ups and downs. You kind of have this platoon now in center field at the moment, with Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri, and then you got Starling Marte as well. I don't know how many more of those type outfielders I want to add to this team.
Mm-hmm.
I think I want something a little more concrete, whether it is Soto or they then, have to get a Santander if they can't get Soto. I want something a little more concrete on that. And Sean Manaea, we're both in on, right? You're in on Sean Manaea as well. Yeah. I think the Mets bring back Sean Manaea and trade for a starting pitcher. And maybe bring a Bieber type guy in on a Sevy type deal.
I could see that
type deal. So that's we're both in on Manaea. I'm pretty sure most of the chat is as well. Max Scherzer, no, thank you.
No.
Get past that. See, a guy like Jurickson Profar, I would be more intrigued in than a Tyler O'Neill.
I would agree. I think after the Soto is in a class by himself, and then Santander is very interesting to me. I would put Jurickson Profar I would put him ahead of Tyler O'Neill. I would still keep Tyler O'Neill ahead of Teoscar Hernandez. That's how I would rank them. Profar is interesting. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. That's the top 25 MLB free agents there that we got. And I got to get used to switching screens here. There we go. Okay. I got to play around with that when the show is not on, because there's just too many buttons to mess around with here. Adele Chapman asking, what percentage do you give the new Japanese pitcher Roki Sasaki signing here? Does the Dodgers getting Snell make him more of a possibility? I think he's still a possibility for the Dodgers, because he's going to be getting a minor league deal. He's not getting what Yamamoto got. Mm-hmm. So I think the Dodgers are 100% still in play for a guy like Roki Sasaki.
Just keeping with what I said before, I will say that 3 teams have a 33.33% chance of getting him: the Mets, the Dodgers, and the Padres. Now that I've said that, he'll probably sign tomorrow with the Giants, but I think for everything I said earlier, I think that there's a let's say 1/3 each for those three teams possibility.
I want to discuss just real quick some news and happenings. It's really just one thing. The Mets signed left-handed pitcher Genesis Cabrera to a minor league contract. He'll get an invite to spring training. 28 years old, 3.59 ERA, 50 strikeouts in 62 and 2/3 innings pitched, has a career 3.89 ERA. Biggest concern for him is his walk rate has gone up the last 3 seasons, trying to get away from pitchers that have that. But maybe Stearns and Hefner and the pitching lab can tap into some potential. More depth signing here could probably beat out, if they don't get a guy like Tanner Scott, this could be the lefty out of the bullpen. I mean, I don't have as much confidence in a guy like Danny Young than I know a lot of people do.
Yeah. I think it's a depth signing, like you said. I think we've seen with Stearns in Milwaukee and just in 1 year with the Mets, he is willing to move around in the bullpen. He's going to cut guys. He's going to release guys, whatever. He's going to bring guys up. He's going to use the shuttle. He's going to do all the things he has to do to make sure the Mets have the freshest and, best version of their bullpen at any given time. So I don't hate it, but I think I just think it's a depth deal and it's not one to get excited over. I think if you asked me gun to my head, he probably pitches at some point for the Mets this year because that's how relievers with experience work. He would have to be a complete and utter disaster, in spring, or if he doesn't make the team out of spring, like he's in AAA, like he would have to be brutal to not get a call because look how teams use their bullpens and look how teams use, these guys who are depth signings. So I think you see him at least pitch a little bit for the Mets this year, I'd say.
You look at what we've had in the past couple of years when it comes to lefties, Joely Rodriguez is of the world, Danny Young, Alex Young, all the names that come across here. This guy's had a, under 4 ERA last season, under 4 career ERA. That is a big positive for me to get a guy like that. It'll be interesting to see how he faces off against left-handed. I did not get those stats down, but man, to have a guy with an under 4 ERA, a lefty coming in out of the bullpen, I'll take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Mets were searching for a lefty ever since Brooks Raley got hurt. And, they had guys do an okay job of it, but get a lefty in here. And I don't know if you know this. Major League Baseball teams are allowed to have more than one lefty in their bullpen. And I think the Mets should probably do that.
I've been preaching for it since I started this podcast, man. Like, can we get more than one lefty in the bullpen, for goodness sakes?
Yeah. Like, you know what? Bring Genesis Cabrera. Great. And then also maybe just sign Tanner Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As we wrap up the show, we got 764 people in the chat. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you for being a part of this. I don't know if you guys are attending the QBC, but I know I will be there as a panelist. John is hosting the QBC. John, get a little bit into what's going to be happening in this QBC. I'm going to bring up the schedule of events that are happening.
Yeah. The QBC is great. I have hosted it for the last 3 years. So this will be my 4th year hosting it. I was pointing to these 2 things behind me because they are QBC posters from years past. And I've got a blank space over here right behind my head by design. I just moved into my new apartment about a month and a half ago. And so when I was having all this stuff hung up, I was like, save a space because I'm going to have another one of these QBC flyers up behind me. But it's a great time. If you've never been to it, it is basically the de facto New York Mets fan fest. I know the Mets tried to do a fan fest and then gave up on it. And I know that they're bringing back some semblance of a fan fest now. I'm sure it'll be better than the one that they did under the Wilpons because Cohen is a better owner and it's probably going to be a better experience. But the thing that I know is that the QBC is a great experience. It's going to be year 11 of the QBC, and it started very humbly over at Catch Astoria, and, Keith and Dan and everybody who runs the QBC works so hard to make sure that it is the best possible experience for Mets fans. They bring back former players, sometimes current players who are interesting, who have good stories to tell. And obviously, there's the autographs that come with it, but there's also a lot of stuff you don't expect. There's, some really great creators and vendors selling some other stuff. It's great if you're a collector of memorabilia, collector of baseball cards, things like that. And then you do get to, if you're watching this show live or you watch my show live, you get a lot of that really live and in person. You said you're going to be there. You're on the State of the Mets panel, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And I host, kind of MC the whole event, but I'll also be interviewing a player. I'll also, Ibby and I will be doing a version of our podcast, Til Mets Do, as part there. So like, if you enjoy baseball the way that a lot of people here do in this chat and watching live and listening to the Subway to Shea podcast and stuff, if you enjoy it, to digest baseball in that way, you're going to enjoy the Queens Baseball Convention, because it is just a full day of Mets baseball in every way, shape, or form. And so, it's just a really great time. Turk Wendell, Greg Jeffries, Ray Knight, Jose Reyes, good group of former players there. SNY always does a great panel. I know Roger Clark from New York One is always an interviewer at one of the panels. Lori Rubinson from WFAN, always an interviewer at one of the panels. Dennis Holden, DHAP, who hosted the QBC before me, is a great friend of mine. Took a little bit of a step back. He's coming back to do some stuff. So it's gonna be a fun day. We got the Gil Hodges Award going to Art Shamsky. Like, there's just so much to do and to see over several hours. Really, it's like a 7-hour day or whatever.
Full day event.
It's an all day thing, and it's great.
4 Points Sheridan. Let me bring that up. Located 3368 Farrington Street in Queens. Make sure you get your tickets. There's still tickets available. Like John mentioned, Turk Wendell, Greg Jeffries, Ray Knight, Jose Reyes. You are hosting the panel, you said, with, was it Ray Knight?
No, I am doing the Turk Wendell.
Okay. I feel like that changed on the website.
It may have changed at one point. Yeah. So I am doing the
Turk. I see. Yeah, there we go. Turk Wendell, you'll be on at 10:30. They'll have the Gil Hodges before that. Doors open at 10. SNY Baseball Night in New York. I think that's Licata. That's Terry Collins. And I think the other, I remember them saying those two at the most. Maybe Hannah Kaiser as well, but I know there's some other SNY pundits going to be there. Greg Jeffries will be done by Captain Joe Shoes. You have me along with Ibby, who's going to be on there as well. Kelly Franco hosting 3 Innings Fan. And Joe DeMeo, co-host of the Mets Pod, will be doing the State of the Mets panel with host Mark Healy. That's at 1:15. Like you mentioned, Greg Jeffries as well. You're Ray Knight with Roger Clark, and then Lori Rubinson will have the Jose Reyes panel. Guys, get your tickets. Make sure you get out there and be a part of the QBC. Shout out to Keith Blacknick, the Media Goon, for putting this together on a yearly basis. His team does a great job, very accommodating. My first year last year was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a whole lot, being a part of that. Being there at the QBC and getting to meet a lot of the players, talking with them. They hang out at the lobby. You see them there as well, and just chopping it up with Terry Collins and all these players as well. Never thought I would get to meet Billy Wagner and Cliff Floyd, like from my childhood of watching the Mets play. I mean, awesome moments, awesome memories are made there.
Absolutely. And it's there's food there, there's refreshments.
Yes.
Last year, I think Catch Astoria went ahead and provided the food. I don't know 100% off the top of my head if they will be doing it again this year, but I think they will be. And there's refreshments and everything. So like it is a day, but like it's, you're not going to be sitting there uncomfortable. It's a really great space at the 4 Point Sheridan. That's a really nice hotel if you've never been there. So like it's a very comfortable, fun experience, because I know it's a lot of hours too. Obviously to make the most of your ticket, especially if you have the one with all the VIP stuff, you want to be there the whole day. But it's also something that you don't necessarily have to be there the whole day for. If you've got little kids with you and things like that, like you can certainly figure out how to make the day work for you, I think.
Absolutely. You could follow the QBC on X at QB Convention and follow the Media Goon at Media Goon. That's Keith Blacknick, and all the updates for this next Saturday at 10. Doors open. Make sure you go to the QBC and say hello to me, to John, to Ibby, all of us.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure you're mostly going to meet the players, but we'll be there as well.
We will be there.
We'll have a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of fun. John, this has been a whole lot of fun having you on the Subway to Shea podcast. Again, I always like doing these episodes right before we get ready for the QBC because action tends to happen. Not so much, now just more rumors, but we tend to get stuff going on. Maybe we'll break some news at the QBC.
We did 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I think it was the 2 days before the QBC, DeGrom signed with Texas. And then the day of the QBC, Justin Verlander signed with the Mets. Wow. And I know that didn't turn out the way, any of us wanted it to, but I'm pretty sure that was the timeline of events. So you never know. I mean, it is running right up against like where the winter meetings are going to be and everything. So it's possible. It's possible we can have some, I hope we have a little bit of breaking news because I don't want to keep speaking in possibilities. And, I'm getting to the point where like, I want to talk about what happens with Juan Soto. I don't want to get to a point where I'm like, and then like I said on Subway to Shea, and then like I said on Til Mets Do Part 3 weeks ago, and just like rehashing the same conversations over and over again.
Yeah. I just completely turned off my phone on Thursday for Thanksgiving. I'm like, I'm not doing this all day. Juan Soto to Boston, the Yankees. I'm not doing this all day. This has got to be, unless he breaks and unless Passan says something, I am just going to keep it quiet and go about my day. What else you got going on besides the QBC next Saturday? We got an episode of Til Mets Do Part this week.
We do. We have a great episode of Til Mets Do Part coming up on Wednesday. You can always find us Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. So it's a little earlier in the day for me out here on the West Coast, but me and my co-host Matt Ibby Ibanez do a great job. We're there every single week, Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We're also getting close to our goal, which is 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And when we do, we are going to give away an autographed Edwin Diaz baseball to one lucky subscriber. So all you have to do is subscribe to our channel on YouTube to be automatically entered to win an Edwin Diaz autographed baseball, which I think is pretty cool. And it's extra cool because Ibby is giving it away from his personal collection. So he reached into the coffers and he pulled out something that he felt like he should give away to fans who support the show. So we appreciate everybody who listens. We appreciate everybody who's ever, been a viewer, live or otherwise, commenter. We appreciate all of our guests, past, present, and future, yourself included. And I love when you jump into the comments, even when you're not a guest on the show, because it's always welcome to have a little bit more Aunt Rivera in our lives.
I appreciate it. You can follow John and Til Mets Do Part at Til Mets Do Part. Make sure you're following and subscribing to Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. Follow me, Aunt Rivera 86 on X, and subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify. My next goal is 700. So let's get to 700 subscribers on YouTube. Hopefully we get some news and action from the Mets this week. And definitely by the time we get to the QBC, because the winter meetings are coming up next week. Well, the following week. So
absolutely. Oh, let me just say, one more time, because I'm actually looking at you now and I can say it. Congratulations on the big news, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. People may know a little Subway to Shea, and I say little Subway to Shea is on the way. I posted it on X the other day, but appreciate the kind words. I know someone else posted it on Johnny Boy posted it as well in the chat, but thank you so much, man. Got another Mets fan to bring into the world and torture them for the next 20 or 30 years of their life of being a Mets fan, because that's the only way to be, right?
Absolutely. Just don't make him a Jets fan too. Just don't do that.
Yeah, that's something I don't think I think every other sport you can possibly pick whatever you want. Baseball is untouched. It has to be Mets, but I'm pretty sure they'll figure that out at some point when they go to all the games and stuff like that. But thank you everyone in the chat. Appreciate the kind words. But that'll wrap it up for the Subway to Shea podcast. Appreciate you all for tuning in. That'll do it for me and John for this week. Always remember, let's go Mets.